Good evening, all, and welcome to our 13th Careers Day. This Careers Day's topic is on blockchain development, and I'm so excited that everyone is here. So, we're just going to kick things off. And just to give everyone a synopsis of what Careers Day is all about, Career Day aims to bring awareness to different fields in tech and provide an informal guide for how students and professionals can chart their own course in these fields or roles. I am pleased to mention that Career Day is only one of several event series organized by the Jamaican developers community. So, who are we, the Jamaica Developers Community? We are a community of creative thinkers, thought leaders, and innovators who love working together to solve common problems. We are transforming the Caribbean community from a consumer to a producer of technology. I want to give a big and special shout out to our sponsors for this evening's event. They are Osub Limited, Vertis Technology Solutions, as well as Particular Presence Technologies. My name is Jada Ferguson, and I am the Communications Officer for the community. I am pleased to introduce our co-founder, who is also here, O'Shane Bailey. And I'm now going to introduce our speaker for today, Mr. Trevor Forrest. So I'm just going to give you guys just a quick synopsis of Mr. Forrest. So, Mr. Forrest, for the past 6 years, Mr. Forrest has been a passionate enthusiast of blockchain technology. In his own words, blockchain technology is the next big thing in tech, along with artificial intelligence and machine learning. It is his firm belief that blockchain technology will become the most critical underpinning component of any digital society. He is currently one of a handful of certified blockchain architects in Jamaica and the Caribbean. He is an active member and contributor to the ISO Technical Committee TC307 on blockchain with the Bureau of Standards of Jamaica. So that is our speaker for today. Everyone who is here, please note that you can drop your questions in the chat while the presentation is going on. And I'm now going to hand over to our presenter, Mr. Trevor Forrest.
Great. Thanks so much for having me. It's really an honor to be here. I know the topic of blockchain is something that is of a lot of interest, especially in the developer community. So I hope the presentation today will kind of shed some more light on the blockchain space and some of the opportunities that exist. I'm going to go through my presentation pretty quickly, so as to give you time to ask questions, because I would suspect there's more questions to be asked than listening to me babble. So I'm going to run through really quickly, and then we can get into some dialogue. So just a little bit about my company, SM6 Technology Solutions. Among other things, we do blockchain as a service solutions and consulting, digital transformation and business process optimization, big data analytics platforms, of course, web application development, and a couple other things, including data and information security. We have a lot of partners, enterprise level partners that we work with, IBM, Cloudera, Red Hat, Fortinet, Signature Global Sign, and a couple others that aid us in providing a lot of the solutions that we provide to our clients. We've been around since 2006. Really happy that we're still in business, given all of the stuff that has been happening over the years. So that's a little bit about SM6 Solutions. Now, let me talk a little bit about blockchain, and as you have heard in the introduction, I'm very excited and passionate about blockchain. Why? Because I think what blockchain will do going forward is what the internet did for us from the early 90s coming up. So internet really created a whole new way of information exchange, um, communication via email, phones, all of that kind of stuff. And for the longest while, we were thriving on being able to freely communicate. The internet literally shrank the world as we know it, but we still weren't able to find a way to do the same thing with exchange of value, goods, and assets, and so on, because there were some unique problems there. Then came blockchain, and I think in much the same way that the internet and its underpinnings, hidden thing is TCP/IP. I think blockchain is what's going to be the key underpinning to value exchange going forward. So we conquered information exchange. Now we need to conquer the exchange of value and assets and so on. I think blockchain is going to be the key component for that. Some people may or may not know what blockchain is, and put really simply, it's a distributed, secure digital ledger. It keeps a track. It's a very special kind of ledger. It keeps a track of any type of transaction that occurs, and it does so using a peer-to-peer consensus network that facilitates validation of transactions without the need for a central certifying authority. Now, this is very important because when you're really talking about frictionless and ubiquitous value exchange, one of the biggest bottlenecks is the man in the middle. What blockchain tends to do is to remove that. Now, every time I do a blockchain presentation, I always include this slide because there is always a common misconception and confusion between what blockchain is and what the hot topic these days is in the form of cryptocurrency. And if you come away from this presentation with anything, is this: blockchain is not Bitcoin. All right, so if you learn anything from this presentation outside of the career opportunities, just know this: blockchain is not Bitcoin. Blockchain is the technology that Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies in general run on, but there is a fundamental difference between the two. All right. So we call blockchain a distributed ledger, and what exactly is that technology? It's really a very special kind of transaction tracking system that's distributed. It allows for anonymous, where needed, types of transactions. It's a programmable platform. It's also extremely secure based on the fact that all transactions are cryptographically created and secured with very sophisticated cryptography. But perhaps one of the more important things is the immutable nature of all transactions that happen on the blockchain. And simply what immutable means is that once a record or transaction is written to the chain, it can't be changed. And that leads to a lot of security. And there are pros and cons of it, but generally that's one of the things that blockchain and distributed ledger technology demonstrates. Why is it important? Well, what it promises to do is to create a whole new type of environment for doing value exchange of assets, currencies, and so on. And it does so in a very unique way, because up until the advent of blockchain, asset and currency exchange and so on always had to have some sort of arbiter in the middle. And this is very, very critical to understand, because in going forward with value exchange in the digital realm, it would be difficult to try to mimic the current systems that we have without running into some challenges, especially if you want hyper efficient and frictionless transactions in that realm. And that's how blockchain tends to work, and blockchain solves that problem. So what you'll find is that transactions will be faster, they'll be way more transparent, because the participants in blockchain-based networks and transactions, they can actually see the transactions that are occurring. A lot of the transactions can be governed by rules. Some platforms, they'll call those smart contracts. And because the architecture of blockchain is distributed, and it's very resilient and redundant and so on. So it has all of the major ingredients. And of course, perhaps the most important one is security, because in the digital realm, security nowadays is extremely important. So those are some of the benefits and the importance of blockchain, because if it is, and many of you will hear people talking about digital society and digital nation and going digital, and if it is that we hope to really move entirely into the digital domain, and at the same time increase efficiencies, reduce the cost of transactions and so on, this kind of technology is what is going to be required to do so. So in effect, because of how blockchain is designed, what it does, and this is a phrase I typically use, it creates trust by eliminating the need for trust. And that's important to understand, because whenever you're in the digital realm doing transactions, you're oftentimes doing transactions with entities you know nothing about, people you may not know or may not ever see. But you want to ensure that both or all the participants in the transaction get what they're supposed to get. And in doing so, you have a rock solid transaction environment. And in doing so, a certain level of trust without knowing somebody has to be created. That's really what some of the major advantage of this technology is, because when we're now looking to fiercely advance how we function in digital realm blockchain, again, like I said, it's going to be a major underpinning for that. All right, so what are some of the top blockchain platforms out there? Well, undoubtedly, perhaps the most popular one is Ethereum. You have Hyperledger, you have Corda. Those are very popular. Consensus, Quorum, Ripple, Cardano, Polygon, Solana. These are some of the more popular and top ones out there. By far, this is not even a handful. There are so many more platforms out there, but I just kind of wanted you to get an idea of some of the major ones that are out there. Ethereum is both a blockchain platform and a cryptocurrency. It is the second most popular one next to Bitcoin. But Ethereum itself is a blockchain platform. So you'll find that in industry, a lot of the entities or major companies that are looking at moving into the blockchain space will perhaps look at any of these platforms. Like I said, there are many other platforms. In fact, some companies create their own platforms to once you have a good understanding of blockchain, you can actually do that. What are some of the opportunities in business? Well, the opportunities are vast. Blockchain, and I'm going to just run through a couple really quickly. In securities, digital currency, record keeping, smart contracts, a lot of things and industries that blockchain plays a huge part in: health records, voting, IP, digital rights management, crowdfunding, remittance, huge supply chain and logistics, e-commerce, lending, equity markets, and so on. These are, a couple of the opportunities and ways in which blockchain is being used. Blockchain can be used a lot in banking for KYC, loan syndication, trade. A big one will be smart contracts and transactions for banking and financial products, and streamlining those, cross-border and interbank transactions, and so on, and of course remittance. It's also useful in the insurance space, primarily for fraud prevention. If properly implemented, blockchain can prevent a lot of the fraud that costs insurance companies money. It's a huge thing in the insurance space right now. It can also streamline issuance of insurance services and products. Another big one, especially in our environment, is in the music or creative industry. A lot of you will have heard about NFTs. So NFTs is one component of how blockchain technology can impact the creative industry. So royalty management, rights management, securing your works, and so on. Again, blockchain will act as an underpinning, and blockchain-based platforms can do that. E-commerce, similarly, blockchain will play a huge role in streamlining a lot of the e-commerce transactions in concert with financial institutions, and so on. And one that is often not considered a lot is how blockchain will help to transform the cybersecurity space. I can just use one example really quickly. It's I think last year, one of the largest breaches that occurred was defined as a supply chain data breach, happened to SolarWinds. And what it really was based on was the inability to verify, downloads from what was called a trusted source of software updates and so on. So one of the things that was always a challenge was, how do you ensure that where the information is coming from is a trusted source? Right now what we do, when you download stuff and you want to make sure that the source is right, you use MD5 hashing to make sure that what you have is what was actually sent. Well, that kind of gets a little cumbersome because it takes a couple extra steps to verify that. Perhaps not for the developer or the technically astute, but for Joe Schmo out there who is not as technically astute, or when you're talking about automated processes and so on, you really don't have the luxury of that. Blockchain technology can actually alleviate a lot of those issues and concerns as it relates to things like that. Also, DNSSEC, which is secure DNS, right now, a huge proportion of a lot of the domains on the internet can be spoofed, and one of the methods to treat with that is DNS security. But going forward, you're going to find a whole new realm of managing DNS, using blockchain as an underpinning to ensure that DNS records can no longer be impersonated, and so on. You do have blockchain also in the automotive industry. We didn't go too much into that. But again, what I want to kind of show here is the wide array of use cases for blockchain technology, which again, I think it's one of the major things that's going to really impact value exchange. So what are some of the opportunities and career paths? Well, I want to show you here, and this comes from Blockchain Council, which is where I actually got my blockchain architect certificate. Actually, I have two certifications from blockchain architect and blockchain expert. But these here are the top 10 highest paying jobs in the blockchain sector. At the top of the list, you have the developer, then you have the architect, then you have the project manager, you have the UX developer, the quality engineer. The legal consultant is a very interesting one because every time I speak about blockchain and explain how the technology works, there are any lawyers in the room, they always question whether or not, through the use of smart contracts and so on, that the value of lawyers will be diminished, or if lawyers' jobs are a threat or whatever. And I often tell them no, because lawyers don't write code, but lawyers have to interpret the law for people who write code so that the right logic can be utilized, right? So you have the legal consultant, the blockchain engineer, the blockchain analyst, and then of course you have the software engineer is always going to be a critical component in any sort of development project. And lastly, you have the crypto community manager, and that speaks to blockchain projects that are token or crypto based and so on. I'm going to talk a little bit about a couple of these jobs and what they pay, what they do. So blockchain developers, I mean, programmers really who are experienced in working with C++, C#, Java, JavaScript, Python, Go, and these are the ones who create blockchain applications. It does require knowledge of how blockchain works. So the fact that C++ or Python or JavaScript or Java is a huge plus, but you have to do some other work because you need to fully understand how blockchain works and the idiosyncrasies of blockchain itself, so that when you're programming and building applications, you understand clearly how that's done. That takes you onto the architect that really, in concert with everybody else, formulates how the application or the platform will be worked and designed and works with all the other components, the UX designers, the developers, the system admins, and so on, to ensure that the ultimate outcome and the application or solution is what it needs to be. The UX designers, the quality engineers, and the analysts, these posts are akin to their sister posts in UX, UI design, QA, quality testing, and quality assurance, and business analysts, and so on. It's just that these posts, again, require understanding now of the intricacies of blockchain networks and so on. So again, a lot of people already have once you have a firm knowledge of some of the basics for the developer space, UX, UI design, QA, and so on, then what you need to do is really level up in the blockchain space to understand the specifics of blockchain, to then apply your whatever skill set you have in the blockchain environment. So it's not like you're starting from scratch. What you're doing now is augmenting and enhancing some of the other knowledge that you have and applying it to the blockchain space. Similarly with the legal consultant, good understanding of how technology and the law intersects is extremely important. And a fair understanding of how blockchain works is very important as well. So these are some of the different jobs that exist, and as you can see, on average, they earn, they're in demand, and they're good paying jobs. Now, some of you might look on this and you're like, well, yeah, nobody in Jamaica paid me for this. Well, you're not trying to work in Jamaica. You don't need to. So I don't think I have to explain that part to you. But this is globally, these are the global figures for these kinds of positions. Who's hiring? Well, a lot of companies are hiring. financial, healthcare, insurance, governments, um, all over the place. A lot of entities, as you can see here, are hiring tech startups, public sector, private sector. A lot tech companies are really looking for this kind of expertise. There are a couple locally who are also looking. So I think it represents a huge opportunity. It's currently it's a niche market, but I think it represents a huge opportunity for those who have a particular skill set already, but can augment it with additional knowledge of this burgeoning technology called blockchain. So that's really what I wanted to go through. I think I did it in my allocated time. So what I kind of want to do now is to perhaps take some questions about it, and we can talk about blockchain and also the opportunities that exist. So, Madam Moderator, I will turn it back over to you, and we can open the floor for any questions if there are any.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Forrest. Really, really, really enjoyed that presentation. Very fulfilling for us. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. Or if so, you can use the raise hand feature, but I will ask O'Shane to, O'Shane usually has questions about a lot of things. I'm gonna ask O'Shane to go ahead and take over with this segment as it relates to questions. Well, first I'll read this one here from Jason that says, you noted that blockchain is very secure. However, with the collapse of certain currencies such as Luna and platforms including Voyager, both billion-dollar entities, how secure is an investment in blockchain?
Right. So I like that question because it highlights something that I pointed out at the very beginning. So the question is phrased, how secure is an investment in blockchain? You don't invest in blockchain, you invest in cryptocurrencies. And one of the things that I pointed out before, blockchain is not a cryptocurrency. Blockchain is not Bitcoin, blockchain is not Litecoin or Monero, nothing like that. Blockchain is the technology on which those things run. Now, those cryptocurrencies, when they are created, one of the things that you find is if what is sitting on top of blockchain itself is not built properly, you will have situations like that occurring, which is why it's important to have all of those particular skill sets, because again, listen, encryption exists, right? But you have some components in the chain of data and information security that regards how much encryption you have. If one of those components in that chain doesn't do what they're supposed to do, data is still breached. So again, be mindful of confusing blockchain with cryptocurrencies. They're not the same thing. Blockchain, the technology goes way beyond cryptocurrencies. Cryptocurrencies is one use case, just so happens to be the most popular one and the one that everybody focuses on. But blockchain technology itself goes way beyond cryptocurrencies. So be mindful of that. You don't invest in blockchain. You invest in a cryptocurrency. Now, if what the cryptocurrency or how the cryptocurrency platform is built using blockchain technology or the particular blockchain technology it uses is not properly done, then you might have issues that you're seeing with different cryptocurrencies collapsing and so on. So pay close attention to those fundamental differences between the two.
Okay, thank you for that one. Nicole McKenzie here commented that the smart contracts for cryptocurrencies are the loopholes. Smart contracts are the code written to use blockchain technology. Does anybody else have any more questions? If so, you can go ahead and open your mic now, use the raise hand feature, or also drop them in the chat. Okay, so I see Jason here has another question. Where does one go to get certified in blockchain?
Right. So there are a couple of reputable entities out there to do that. You have the Blockchain Alliance, you have the Blockchain Council. You can actually go on Coursera. There are some universities that are offering blockchain certifications. But I think the two major ones that I would recommend is the Blockchain Alliance and the Blockchain Council. They have perhaps by far the widest array of certifications currently. And I think those are perhaps the two. There's one other that slips my mind right now, but the Blockchain Training Alliance. Let me put the URL in the chat. Let me just find it here. So I'm going to put the URL for the Blockchain Training Alliance, and I'm going to put the URL for Blockchain Council in the chat. Right. And both those are pretty good. Like I said, I got my certification from Blockchain Council, and also University of New York has a couple of courses that I got some certification on as well. But these two that I'm giving you are the ones that I would recommend. So if you look in the chat, you'll see Blockchain Training Alliance and the Blockchain Council.
Okay, thank you so much for that one. Nicole here is asking, Trevor, can you elaborate on the types of developer languages used to write smart contracts for cryptocurrencies?
All right, so when we use the term smart contracts, it's really limited to particular blockchain platforms, the primary one being Ethereum. So because you have blockchain platforms like Hyperledger, and Hyperledger has its edition of smart contracts. They don't call it smart contracts within that space, but generally, and as such, the language that you use varies. But generally, the main programming language for smart contracts is Solidity in the Ethereum space. But what you'll find, and the other one is Go, and you'll find Go heavily in use in the Hyperledger space. The general thing, though, is if you go and look at the syntax for those languages, if you know Python, if you know C++, C#, or JavaScript, you can adjust in those environments pretty easily. So when you look at Solidity syntax, if you understand JavaScript, you can move to Solidity pretty quickly. Similarly with Go, you can do that. So if you have a firm understanding in JavaScript, Java, Python, C++, you won't have a problem picking up things like Solidity and Go, which are the main smart contract languages. You also have a couple others, one called Simplicity, and it's another one, slips my mind right now. But the key thing is, once you have a solid background in some of the traditional ones, C++, JavaScript, Java, Python, you should be able to move into Solidity and Go. The thing about it is, in writing smart contracts, there are a couple of things you have to be cognizant of. Firstly, because blockchain technology and blockchain networks and the blockchain environment is such that transactions are immutable. Once a transaction is written to the chain, it can't change. And the more transactions, more blocks, hence the more transactions, hence the more blocks on a chain, is the more secure and more hardened the chain is. Now, the thing about it is, if you get smart contracts wrong, it could impact the integrity of your chain. Case in point, for some of you who function in the cryptocurrency space or play around in it, you'll notice that there are two, well, I said three this week, but there are two Ethereums. You have Ethereum and Ethereum Classic. Ethereum Classic was born out of the fact that there was an issue with the original iteration of Ethereum, and as a result, that code had to be forked to get the what we call Ethereum now. Ethereum Classic is based on old code that had a security flaw in it. And one of the things that you have to be mindful of is when you're writing smart contracts, the contracts themselves, once they are written, and based on how you write them, you can't change them after that. So you have to be very careful how you write smart contracts. So the fact that you can code is one aspect. The important thing is understanding the ramifications of the logic in the smart contract that you're writing. So one of the things you have to consider now is modularity of contracts and how you apply them. So that's one thing. The second thing is, again, because information on a blockchain can be changed, you have to be very careful now what kind of data you store on the chain. So you have this thing called on-chain, off-chain information, because one of the things that you don't want to do is you don't want to have information that is stored on the chain that, should somebody want that information to be removed, you can't remove it, because when you start to think about legal issues, data protection, where someone might determine that they don't want their information stored on your system, and you have a blockchain-based system, and the information that you stored is on-chain, you can't take it off, which means your system now is out of compliance. Have a good day, because you have to start that over, because now you're breaking the law. So those are a couple of the things that you have to contemplate as it relates to writing smart contracts and so on. Your contracts also have to contemplate the legality of the laws that exist and the fact that those laws can also change. So it's a little bit more than just coding, but those are some of the considerations as it relates to smart contracts and so on.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Forrest, for those. I noticed that Nicole, commented that she found some others like Haskell for Cardano Addo, Rust for Solano, and Nair Protocol. And she says, thank you for elaborating. Glenford Williams asks,
Cardano, yes, that's another one.
Okay. Glenford Williams asks, how do you go about debugging smart contracts?
Yeah, so this is where, again, you have to have a collaborative effort, right? It's a very good question, because, again, the question is coming from the mindset of a coder, but a smart contract goes beyond code and logic, right? Because now you need the legal input, right? So you will debug your code in the traditional way just to make sure that syntax and everything is okay and all right. But the impact of the contract in the bigger picture is another layer of debugging, because now what you have to contemplate is the logic of the smart contract. So let me give you an example. You might, so smart contracts are rules, right? And these rules are what determine or what trigger particular things to happen in a transaction process, right? So um, let's say you're buying a car, and the process of buying a car has a whole bunch of things that occur, and each touch point requires some sort of input. So you go to the car dealership, you identify a car, you tell the dealer, I want this car. And the dealer will go through and say, you know, Glenford Williams wants this car. For Glenford Williams to get this car, he must fill out this information. That information has some required fields. And based on that, once he fills that out, the system is going to go through and check it. And it's going to establish a relationship between the dealership and Glenford. It can be represented in a smart contract, all right? Simple. Then the next thing is, okay, now the dealer has to go and get the car off the wall, register it, and all of that. You have to do that stuff, which is an engagement between the car dealership and tax office. Now, there's a process that occurs there. And one of the things that a smart contract can do is streamline that process as it relates to the different paperwork and so on, which in this realm now would be entirely digital. So the transaction that a person may do at tax office may now be completely digitized, which means it's now hyper efficient, which means it happens very fast. It does so because it's following rules born out in a smart contract. So now the smart contract has to contemplate all the different scenarios that could occur when that part of the process goes through. Because again, to buy the car, you must have the money. To drive the car, you have to have insurance. So to register and get all that, right? So when you contemplate all of that stuff now, you know how to factor all of this stuff into code and hope that from the standpoint of the agreement you have with the bank to pay for the car, which ensures that you can go to the dealership and get into it and drive away because now you have insurance and you have a driver's license as told to the bank and the dealership by tax office and so on. All of these things now are components that factor into a smart contract that ensures that all the different rules that must be in place to complete that transaction occur. So when you start to debug smart contracts, it is not about simply debugging code. You are looking at a process that has components over and above code. You have legal components, you have regulatory components, and all that kind of stuff as it relates to how you do that. This is why, you know, all the different actors in the blockchain ecosystem, those high-paying jobs are so important, because we're talking about creating an environment now for value exchange that is mimicking what happens when people do it, but it's doing it entirely in code, entirely digital, and very little discretion, very little room for discretion, because code 9 and no discussion with nobody when it executes, right? But when it executes and a transaction is completed and a block is written, that can't change. So that's, you know, kind of what you have to consider when you're talking about debugging smart contracts. You going a little bit further than simply debugging JavaScript or Python or something like that. I hope that kind of answers the question.
Okay, thank you for that one.
I saw a question here. How to write and test contracts. So one of the things that you're really able to do, you know, you can set up test chain environments. So like Kaleido, IBM's blockchain cloud, AWS has a blockchain environment. I kind of like Kaleido, a lot of flexibility there. But you're allowed to create an environment And you can do just like how you might be doing simple development for any application. You have a dev environment and you can test it in that environment. You can test it on that development chain and see how it works. But you always have to be conscious of the fact that you want to put sufficient room in how you write your smart contracts for things that will change. So when law change, what happens to the smart contract that was written based on a law that came about 10 years prior, right? So all those kind of things you have to consider. So how to so it's like when people tell you when you're building a database, biggest work is the initial database design, because if you don't get that right, a database starts to look really unpretty when you start to do a whole bunch of things after the fact. So that's kind of how that works.
Okay, thank you for that one. I noticed here that Jason had another question that says, in terms of compliance with hosting data, which a user instructs to be deleted, can't this simply be solved in a clause in the terms and conditions, or is it a larger legal issue?
Larger legal issue. Because if you familiarize yourself with data protection legislation globally, GDPR and whatever, the owner of the data is the subject, you and me, the citizen. I may not know what is happening to my data when somebody is using it, but the minute I find out, I have the right and authority to instruct data controllers what to do. It matters not what terms and conditions say. The law says, if you're going to do something with my data, you must tell me. If you didn't tell me and I find out, I can tell you what is going to happen. How you must treat it. So it's a very dicey thing. It's a subject of a lot of discussion, especially when we talk about data privacy and protection in the context of blockchain technology, specifically because of the fact that the nature of blockchain is to write immutable transactions and store data on the chain that can't be changed. And that creates some unique scenarios that have to be contemplated whenever you're going to, build blockchain networks and so on.
Okay, thank you. See, I noticed that you already answered that one there. Nicole also commented, or test networks rather. So Ethereum has a test network, so does Bitcoin, etc. Jonathan here has a question which says, which local companies are hiring? I think you showed that in your presentation. I think you could just reshare that slide so that Jonathan would be able to see it.
Oh, there are no local companies on that list. So no, I mentioned the fact that there are local companies who are hiring. The majority of them are in the financial sector. So I think the only one I can speak of without problem is GK. They are actively looking at blockchain technology type solutions. There are others, but I can't speak to them in a forum like this.
Okay, thank you for that one.
In a couple of months, we're going to be hiring blockchain developers. Right now, one of the challenges we have is the expertise that we require for some of the stuff that we want to do both internally and for clients. Can't find it. So there's no shortage of people with programming capabilities in Python, JavaScript, Java, C#, C++, them things. And it's not a big deal for anybody in that space to go, get familiar with Solidity and Go. The challenge we have is the the overlap between how blockchain works and that, because that requires a whole different training regime for that. So we actually have a partner that we work with. We've always had partners, but we have a particular partner that provides us with sufficient resources to now do enterprise level blockchain development for clients. The other thing that we do is for clients or even developers who want development spaces, we provide that too through IBM, or partnership with IBM, because IBM is a huge blockchain proponent. They contribute heavily to Hyperledger, but we are able to spool up environments for clients, development environments and live environments as well. Like I said, for developers, the environment I like, there are two environments I like. One of them is Kaleido. The other one, which I've started looking into recently, I'll tell you what that one is. Chain Stack, I think it is. Let's make sure. I think it's Chain Stack. Yeah, Chain Stack. Yeah, it's the other one. But Kaleido was one of the first, and Chain Stack started looking at it earlier this year. So far, to me, it looks pretty neat. It has massive support for a lot of the popular chain technologies. So like all the ones I showed, Ethereum, Cardano, Solana, Polygon, a lot of those platforms, it has full support for. But those are the two that are really on my radar as it relates to development for blockchain-based platforms, and of course the IBM space. The thing with IBM's blockchain offering is they are partial to Hyperledger, and one or two things I'm not keen on with the Hyperledger environment as it relates to blockchain. It has its uses, but there are some things that you can't use Hyperledger for.
Okay, thank you. I noticed that Nicole here had shared a website, which is a great site for developers. And Jonathan also asked if, since he can't give names, could you tell him how many other companies are hiring, just like a figure thereabouts?
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear that. Please say
I'm
that again.
saying Jonathan, who had asked about which companies are hiring, being that you can't give out the names, he's just asking for a figure to say how many others are hiring.
Oh, well, like I said, the majority of companies looking at this stuff now in the financial sector, so do that math and you figure it out. You can count them on both hands, and you might have one or two fingers left over for change. Those are some of the main ones, right? In public sector, right now I know of only one entity entertaining blockchain-based development initiatives. So that's the NIDS project.
Okay, thank you. And this is going to be the last question from Zaria Chenshu. She's asking, so based on the example with the tax office, using blockchain would be an alternative to the TAJ making its own system to process interactions with citizens independently. Have other government institutions internationally made use of blockchain so far?
All right, so just to be clear, it doesn't replace, or it won't be an alternative, because TAJ is governed by legislative and regulatory framework. So it would have to be phased in over time. So you're kind of replacing the current rails that exist with one that is blockchain based, which is why it gets to be a major undertaking, because if you go see the madness that is the platforms and systems that exist in TAJ and so on, you would understand. As it relates to other countries that are doing it, yeah. In fact, most people are familiar with Estonia. The core of Estonia's um, digital government platform is built on blockchain. They built their own blockchain environment. So when it first started, it wasn't blockchain based, but now it is. So Estonia is one country. There are a couple countries in Europe that are, moving down that pathway. But I think from a wholesale standpoint, Estonia is like a poster child for how blockchain is used at a national level for a digital society type situation. And there's a case study. I mean, there are a whole bunch. In fact, not only did they create their own blockchain network, they created their own cryptographic algorithms for securing their blockchain network. So they don't depend on the cryptography that would exist, so to speak, that encodes by their own. So yeah, so that's how that works.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Forrest, for answering all the questions that everyone had to ask. Thank you so much for the presentation as well. I would also like to thank everyone for coming out to today's Careers Day. We really appreciated everyone's attendance. Please know, I'm encouraging you all, please to join our community. Please be a volunteer. We're always here, and you can email us at community@caribbean.dev or message us on social media to be a part of our Careers Day or any other events that we do have coming up. I dropped all of that in the chat, so you will be able to reach us out to us on all our social media platforms. Once again, I would like to shout out to our sponsors, Asub Limited, Vertis Technologies Solutions Limited, and Particular Presence Technologies Limited. And thank you guys so much. I'm just going to update you on the next event that we do have coming up. And that event would be a demo day. And that should be next week, Tuesday. I will let everyone know when it comes out through our various platforms such as Telegram, as well as our WhatsApp groups where everyone sees it, and on Meetup. It will be there. And from there, you guys can come again next week. We really do thank you guys again for coming out. And we do hope you all have a great evening. So thank you and good evening.